How is the USA actually helping China, the CCP, and the Chinese government to censor their own internet? Hey Laowinners, it's Laowinners here with another video. And this one's gonna be a little bit touchy because I think a lot of people look to America as the bastion of freedom, liberty, freedom of speech, no censorship. I mean, to a certain extent, you have the whole PC culture and all this kind of stuff, but in comparison to communist China, you're never gonna be in a situation where you have the government telling you what you can't say, what you can't do, actually blocking certain websites, limiting what you can do and say to even people around you, limiting what kind of media you can consume. But at the same time, money rules all, particularly in China. But America's just as guilty of this as well. If we look at a company like Google, Google has always struggled to kind of make China happy. It's a privilege to be a Western or foreign business operating out of China. So when Google actually set up in China, they were allowed to operate as long as they could conform to the CCP's rule of law, rule of censorship. And you know what? Google had an internal discussion. There was a lot of pushback from Westerners in particular that said, if you capitulate to the Chinese government, you are damning that country into future censorship, into future limitations on freedom of speech. So, you know what happened? Rest in peace, Google, you're done. They shut it down, they shut it all down, and also, it was a huge move to kind of promote their domestic search engine, which is called Baidu, China's Google. It sucks, it's awful, there's absolutely no comparison. However, there's another side of the story, because there are American companies that have capitulated almost entirely and have been able to operate out of China. The third thing, and probably the most alarming thing, are how many apps from Apple that have been shut down within China just so that they can operate their app store within China. So many apps have been wiped off the Chinese market, and I want to get into this in depth to show a little bit of hypocrisy from the whole freedom-fighting American perspective of not limiting freedom of speech and, you know, protecting Chinese people's rights of freedom of speech and press. I found a cool site called Censorship.com, which lets you plug in different apps. You can search for different stuff and see by country which countries block certain apps. And if you look at mainland China, you'll actually see that they block over 1,000 different apps from Apple. But it takes two to tango. When I say with this kind of weighted speech that China is blocking these apps, that's not entirely true. These apps are being made unavailable from Apple's side, knowing that if they allow any of these apps like Instagram or Facebook or Google, any of these apps are able to be downloaded within mainland China will be like, you know what, Apple, you're done. Close down the factories, you're out of here. We're gonna promote our domestic Huawei brand and things like this, Xiaomi maybe. And so they know it's a tightrope that they have to walk. So when you search for things like VPNs and stuff like that, you very clearly see that Apple is capitulating with the Chinese government to make all these unavailable in the first place. In April, actually, Hong Kong media reported that certain songs were removed from iTunes. And those are things that kind of alluded to the Tiananmen Square massacre and anything that alluded to like powerful songs that people are using in the current Hong Kong protest. So if they're removing music, this is another step. This is not just blocking social media apps to promote their own domestic version of it. This is actual music and freedom of speech. And right now, Google and Facebook are being called treasonous for actually dealing with China. You see, they're actually pumping millions and millions and millions of dollars into these tech startups in Hangzhou. And these tech startups are using stolen IP and stolen technology from Silicon Valley, from America. So why would they knowingly, these massive companies that have all these competition and potential IP thefts going on, why would they support these tech startups in mainland China? So if you look at a case like Microsoft, when China said, no, Google, bye-bye, Google was like, we're not gonna censor things like Tiananmen Square and all this kind of stuff. They were like, okay, you're out. They shut down the office. Well, when 1 in 5 people in the entire world are Chinese people, in fact, even a tiny glimmer of hope, a little chance that one day these people might be Facebook or Google users is enough for them to throw cash at China and capitulate with the CCP. It's a huge market out there. And when China decides to block all these things, it's a massive dent in their revenue, in their user base, and their relevancy. So if they have a chance to come back and say, listen, we'll do your bidding and we can operate in your country, then they'll do it. And this is the weird thing. This is the hypocrisy involved, because terms of services and company policy and all these American pro-freedom ideals that these companies try to promote or at least represent are completely thrown out the window. we support freedom of speech, we support human rights, we support everything around the world as a moral company, Google and Facebook, yet they're completely shutting down any access from China or Chinese people to actually contact the outside world. But Microsoft was like, you know what? We can do this. All right, we'll capitulate with China. We'll capitulate with the CCP. When you had Bing, another terrible search engine, actually shut down all of the websites that China didn't want people to see, they were still allowed to stay within China. So you have Bing.cn, basically. You have all the search results related to things like Tiananmen Square, related to things like the current protests in Hong Kong. All of these things are censored on Microsoft Bing, but you can still go on that website. Sometimes they take it down, sometimes they put it back up. Seen the same thing with Wikipedia, which has now been shut down. They weren't able to capitulate, so they go away. And you are clearly dealing with a regime with massive human rights issues. The current detention centers in Xinjiang, all of these protests being covered up in Hong Kong, thousands of village protests every day, pollution, kidnappings, everything that China doesn't want the rest of the world to see and actually doesn't want their own citizens to see is actively being stopped not just by China, but by these American companies. It doesn't just stop there though. Tech companies obviously have their fingers in Hollywood's pies as well. If you look at the new Top Gun movie, the remake, this is something that most people in America probably won't care about, but it's something that China cares deeply about. Now, the new Top Gun reboot is funded and produced by Tencent, and Tencent is one of the biggest tech companies in mainland China. They own things like messaging services, WeChat, all of these services that people use on a daily basis are owned by Tencent. And they actually have an office in Silicon Valley, and they are funding these multi-million dollar movie projects. So when Tom Cruise was in the original Top Gun movie, he had patches on his jacket. One of them was the Japanese flag, and one of them was the Taiwanese flag, because it symbolized the tours that these fighter jet pilots were going on. So if they had landed in Japan or they landed in Taiwan on a mission, they got a badge of honor, basically. It's kind of like where I've been in the world. Now, China can't handle that. They hate Japan. They know their citizens hate Japan, or at least they've been told to, and they don't recognize Taiwan as a sovereign nation. They think it's their own territory. So to have these two flags on patches for them is a huge slap in the face, even though it's historically accurate, even though these places exist. China can't handle the fact that these places exist, so these patches were forcibly removed and replaced with complete nonsensical shapes. This shows you how much influence China has in these movies and pieces of entertainment coming out of a free country like the US. When the money is there, it doesn't matter. Morals go out the window. You can see this with politicians. You can see this with lawmakers. You can see this with literally everything. And this is a sour truth that I'm learning, is that if the money is there, if China's willing to invest, they will get their way. And I've always said this, that if there's ever a conflict with China, it's not going to be a conflict, it's not going to be an arms race, it's not going to be some massive nuclear explosion. It's going to be this very slow, soft power influence through our entertainment, through our media, painting this picture that China is faultless, and also painting a domestic picture to its citizens that China is better than everywhere in the entire world and we have nothing to worry about. Is anyone surprised? Turns out tech companies are after a profit. Wow, what a big shock, isn't it? The thing is, it doesn't matter what the terms of service say. It doesn't matter what the CEO says in some boardroom meeting. It doesn't really matter, because what they're actually doing is creating an internet ecosystem that cuts off a fifth of the population from the entire world and creates this massive soft power propaganda machine within its own confines that's swaying the opinions of domestic Chinese people as well, and teaching them, well, we don't really need to participate with the rest of the world because we don't even know that stuff is there. They don't know how to search for this kind of stuff. Even if they had the ability to search for this stuff, it would have been long erased from their memories. In some time, there will be Chinese people that don't even remember what YouTube is because they have Bilibili. There are people that don't remember what Facebook is because they have all these other apps like WeChat and stuff. So China's never been lazy with the propaganda game. China's never been lazy with censorship. They don't just go and say, hey, we're going to ban everything. You're not allowed to do this anymore. They're creating a system where these young kids growing up now have used the domestic equivalent of these apps and stuff and effectively wiped it from their brains. And there's a really cool study that actually happened in Beijing. Researchers at Peking and Harvard Universities published results from a controlled experiment in which 900 Chinese students received an unfiltered connection to the outside world. Those given a chance to sidestep censorship displayed little interest in block sites and information. It's not the case that people are hungering for banned content, says Jennifer Pan, a Stanford professor who studies the digital strategies of autocratic regimes. You could say the system is worked in that people don't know what they're missing and don't demand it. It helps that China's vast internet industry provides plenty of government-compliant content and services, she says. I hope you guys found that interesting. Let me know what you guys think down below. And if you want to see more content, go to patreon.com/Laowinners. You can support the channel. You can also vote on topics and talk to me directly. And I also want to say that every single Wednesday at 1 PM EST, you can watch another Laowinners video. Click right down here to watch another one. Over here, you can watch ADVChina, our motorcycle talk show on 2 wheels. We're going around the world. We're in a bunch of different countries. It's super entertaining, riding motorcycles, talking about some topics, some sensitive, some fun. And number 3, every single Friday, right down here, you can watch SerpentZA just in time for a beer, 1 PM EST. And don't forget, if you have not subscribed to the ADV podcast channel, we want to see you guys over there. It's live, it's fun, participate in the conversation. Have a great time with us every other Thursday there. I want to say thank you so much, Laowinners, and I'll catch you on the next one.